Let it rip today now. We're gonna here and do this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, I'm Mike Gilliam in the CUNY TV studios in the shadows of the Empire State Building in New York City. Welcome to Let It Rip. Today it's all about social media, the good and the bad. The use of social media has exploded around the world, with 2.8 billion people using the platforms. Now, recent statistics show that the average user spends an hour a day on Facebook. For persons on Instagram, they generally spend about, say, 53 minutes or so a day on it. The majority of users fall in the 18 to 44 age range. Lots of good can result, but there are also some concerns. With the tremendous success of Facebook, which also owns Instagram and WhatsApp, some have said that the company is just too big and a monopoly. There are also security questions that have risen out of the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election that included fake pages that were used to sow divisiveness and to try and help get the president elected. And while there's a lot of good out there, hate and bullying are also prominent. There are also questions about whether the algorithms powering the tools are biased or discriminatory. Senators Cory Booker and Ron Wyden have introduced the Algorithmic Accountability Act that would ask the FTC to create rules for evaluating highly sensitive automated systems. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke has sponsored a similar bill in the House. Now, here to help us take a look at all of this and the industry, we have Samara Lynn. She's an author and a tech journalist who has covered the industry for more than a decade and written the book Windows Server 2012 Up and Running. She's the digital manager at Black Enterprise Magazine. We also have Jesse Stern, the founder of Core Voices. That's an organization that builds positive, safe digital environments where over 200,000 people discuss issues around mental health, bullying, and relationships 24/7. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to have you both here. So, Samara, could the algorithms they're using be biased and discriminatory?
Definitely, inherently, they can be biased and discriminatory because the makers of that technology have their own biases. And we saw recently, ProPublica did this amazing expose about how Facebook ads were being used to manipulate properties, housing properties for sale and for rental were being targeted to. And ProPublica found that landlords were able to actually target their ads and their properties to very specific demographics, in many cases leaving out Black and Hispanic people. So yeah, there's definitely inherent bias in creating algorithms.
That's almost like a modern day redlining.
Absolutely.
To a degree, because what we're talking about here is that if Facebook is giving you certain things on your feed, that's all you're really seeing. And if that's not going to you, it's only going to another segment of our population. You wouldn't know about that nice new gated community that you could afford to live in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I don't want to say that the algorithms themselves are racist or biased. Obviously, they're pieces of code.
Right.
But what's happened, and I think I read a piece in Axios, and they put it so eloquently. They called it the opacity of algorithms. Like, we don't really know how they work, and the companies aren't very transparent about how they work. So people who want to use them for more nefarious purposes, they can manipulate the way algorithms work and use them for racist, and biased actions.
Let's hear from Chris Hughes. He is one of the co-founders of Facebook. He founded the company along with Mark Zuckerberg. Let's hear what he has to say about algorithms.
What I know is that there are algorithms, rules essentially, that are programmed to show certain things in newsfeed and other things. Now, I'm on the patent for newsfeed, so it's a very complex thing, but those rules are set by humans. And so Mark himself has said that Facebook went too far, wasn't secure enough.
That's Chris Hughes. What do you think about that, Jesse?
The algorithm is one of the most frustrating parts of my day because we just don't know how it works and we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So much of social media is either negative or simply something that's visual and doesn't really have much meaning. What I have been trying to do is to put messages of positivity and hope in front of people, and you can only do that if they're actually going to see it. And who is seeing your content and why, how all of that works, we just don't have that much insight into that, unfortunately. If we had more, it would be incredible, because we could get the right messages in front of people that they really need to see.
So like with your business where you're dealing with positivity and mental health issues and that sort of thing, if a person had not really searched very much along those lines before maybe needing help, you might not come up?
Certainly. And along with that, the algorithm that might have shown somebody my content a couple of months ago, maybe for some reason that person isn't seeing it now because maybe they didn't click on it recently enough. Maybe they have been searching for other things in other areas. And even though they didn't make that decision for this content not to come up in their feed, it just doesn't anymore. And, again, we just don't know the why. And that's really frustrating.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that kind of frustrates me. Like sometimes I will only see very narrow subject matter. Things that I'm interested in don't really come up. Just maybe one hobby is there. And you're not like, I don't see a lot of stuff on music, musicians, artists, that sort of thing.
But that's another problem. Algorithms change. And Facebook and Google, they change their algorithms constantly. And they're not transparent, mostly, for the most part, about these changes.
And I've also read that many of the algorithms may not really distinguish an African American from a Caucasian person, that they don't read African Americans very well. Is that true?
Yeah, so this is the algorithmic technology behind facial recognition. And it's been proven, and I've tested HP cameras when they first came out with this technology. They could not easily recognize darker skin tones. So the problem with that, of course, is a lot of this technology is now being used in cities for surveillance, especially for, overseeing crimes and things like that. So there are a lot of activists now trying to address that.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the size of these companies, too. That's been another big issue there. Senator Elizabeth Warren has been very much in the forefront about talking about the size of the big companies and saying that if she's elected president, she'll break them up. Let's hear from Elizabeth Warren.
I'm deeply concerned right now that the space around companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google is now referred to by venture capitalists as the kill zone. Because if you try to step a small business into that, one of two things happens. It either gets bought up when it shows its worth, and before it can actually grow into something that's really strong and valuable, or it just gets wiped out.
Jesse, is Facebook too big?
What I try to do is to look for all of the new platforms as they come up. Mm-hmm. And as we just heard in that audio clip, they generally don't make it that far. And that's unfortunate, I think, because there is so much room for diversity on social media, but it's not really allowed to grow.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Samara? Is Facebook too big?
It is, but, I think there's so much heat on Facebook and Apple and Google, and growing big and gobbling up companies, that's kind of the American way. We've seen that the last, since the turn of the century. There are a lot of companies that are too big. You could make the same argument about media companies. Mm-hmm. There's really a handful of media companies controlling most of the narrative. So, until it's addressed as a whole in all of corporate America, which is, I think, is, what Liz Warren has talked about, really just kind of picking on the tech companies, I don't think really is that effective.
Mm-hmm. Russians really ran roughshod, though, over our social media during the election. How do you fix that problem?
Wow. I know Mark Zuckerberg has come out with a lot of announcements and updates and new data and privacy controls. And it really right now, because there's no federal oversight or regulations, it's really up to the companies themselves to address these issues. And I would say Facebook has probably been doing the best job of the big tech companies of addressing it, but they kind of had to since that Cambridge Analytica thing. So their hand were forced,
But he has tried to address it. He
Yes.
stood up and tried to address it. Where do you think we go with all of this, Jesse?
Well, I just want to sort of weigh in on that. I think that there is this talking point that we hear a lot of the social media companies being evil in certain ways, or tech being evil in certain ways. And I think that, I just kind of can't subscribe to that, because I think that what we're seeing are unintended consequences, right? This wasn't the plan. The plan, the plan was connection.
Right.
And in so many incredible ways, that has worked. But with that at scale, with billions of people, things don't go according to plan. And fixing them isn't even necessarily that easy, because if you make a change somewhere, well, that could then affect something else. And just with this many people so engaged, I just don't think answers are easy. So I think that it's more of a nuanced discussion that we should be having around it, rather than this sort of simplistic argument that I think we hear a lot of.
So how do you think we should address it? How do you think we should actually look at it?
Well, I think that what we're seeing, I mean, just as far as my world, is we are seeing platforms like Instagram, for example, starting to implement new either methods or technologies that are fighting against bullying, for example, right? There's a big push into AI to try to understand what people are posting. But even that, it's very difficult to understand why somebody, for example, was tagged in something. What does a photo necessarily mean? These are hard questions that at scale we have to figure out solutions to, but I think that we're seeing a push now to find those answers.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the people that have reached out to your site and kind of what's going on there with them.
So what we're really seeing is a mental health crisis right now. Especially amongst the younger population, we're seeing an exponential rise in depression and anxiety rates. Within certain age groups, we're seeing a doubling in suicide rates. The reasons for this are multiple, but essentially what we're seeing are a lot of people at home more, going out less, and with that, we've seen this impact where they're kind of on their phones, scrolling a lot, seeing a life that doesn't kind of look like theirs, and the symptoms have been really severe. This is kind of the fallout has been severe for them. So what they have ultimately been gravitated towards through what I've built is a whole nother world of people that are going through similar things, are feeling similar things, and instead of just seeing a photo of somebody that doesn't necessarily look like them, and making that comparison, instead, what they're seeing is somebody saying, hey, this is my life right now, this is what I'm going through, can anyone relate? And it's a couple 100,000 people seeing that and saying, yes, I can relate. And through that, a massive community which has turned into a support network has developed. So I think it's really sort of disrupting, in a lot of ways, so much of what we think of social media as far as the negativity, and sort of, I guess, actually getting back, we can say, to the original intention of positive connection.
That's what it's all about, really, is connection. But then it kind of like morphed into something else for some people. And that's kind of an interesting question for me. Like, I sometimes wonder why people are able to say things online, even using their name and their picture, that they would never say face to face.
Totally agree. It's a very, very strange sort of phenomenon. But I would say that beyond that, the more unfortunate part in a way is that you don't have to use your name and your face. You can hide behind anything that you want. And I think the vitriol that we see is largely from people coming from this very negative place where they won't actually have any consequences that they can see.
Mm-hmm. Should that sort of thing be censored, or is that a slippery slope?
Again, there's a slippery slope about, what constitutes as harassment, free speech, and, hate speech.
I totally agree. It is such a hard area. Language is so nuanced. And you don't necessarily know somebody's tone, you don't know their intention. Taking something down that was, in fact, let's say, a genuine question, even though maybe the tone didn't sound like it, well, then what are you doing? Then you're eliminating a potential opportunity for education and discussion. It's hard. It's very difficult. I mean, certainly once you cross into an area where it's obvious, I would agree, but there is such a massive gray area that it's very nuanced and difficult to understand, I think.
And I also think that, like with the algorithms, I might not see that hate speech that's really about me because Facebook is making me only see the things that I like.
Right.
Right? So you might not even know what's going on in that segment, right? Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, another point, too, is Facebook is a private company. I mean, do the constitutional rule of freedom of speech really apply when it comes to a private company? These are things that everyone's debating right now.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's a thin line between criticism and bullying, right?
Certainly. And, again, I think it all sort of is around what we're talking about here, which is the ability to have deep conversation is really important. And we see a lot of that, but, it's just when you sort of stifle that when you're uncertain about somebody's intention or what they necessarily mean, it's just a hard place to be. And maybe the answer is to err on the side of caution, but I don't know. I think about this a lot, and it's just an area where there's not easy answers, I think.
Yeah, it's tough to solve all this stuff. I want to thank you both. Good conversation here with tech journalist and author Samara Lynn of Black Enterprise and Jesse Stern, founder of Core Voices. Thank you both.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break right now, and we'll be back to look at some of the mental health issues involving social media. You're listening to Let It Rip.
You're watching CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Welcome back to Let It Rip. I'm Mike Gilliam. The issue of bullying and negative use of the platforms for hate is important. Here to talk about them are Andrea Becker, a third-year doctoral student at the City University of New York Graduate Center, who received a National Science Foundation Fellowship to study cyberstalking, and Jalan Agnew, who's been working in the field of social work for 13 years and spent a lot of time dealing with treatment programs. She's also worked with people suffering from depression, anxiety, PTSD, and attachment issues, just to name a few. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jalan, most people are on social media for an hour or so, but do some become much more attached than that?
Yes, including myself, absolutely. There's actually this new piece of Instagram that it'll tell you how long you've been on there. When you've been on for an hour, it gives you a prompt. That prompt goes off quite frequently on my phone.
Definitely. It comes way too quickly. And you can't believe it's already been an hour.
That can be a little bit dangerous, though, right? I mean, because when you're watching not only your stuff, but you're looking at other people's lives, what kind of effect does that have on people?
Well, I see a lot of people who get into the comparison game where they look at other people's lives and think their lives should be better. So sometimes it creates both depression and anxiety if that person is seeking out social media to figure out what the norm in their life should be.
Okay. Now, you're studying cyber stalking, and you have stories that happened to you, right?
Right, yeah. I was cyberstalked when I was in college for a few years.
Tell me about it. What happened?
Yeah, well, it was a complete stranger that found me on Facebook. So, like, when you just asked the problems about being all over social media, I think part of it is that it has the capacity to induce these, like, obsessive fantasies in people. If you're seeing someone over and over, you feel like you know them. So yeah, for me, what was interesting was that a lot of it was in the language of like romance and love. Like he was just working really hard to convince me to be his partner, etc.
And you didn't even know each other?
I didn't even know him. Yeah, it was very wild. So now it got me really interested in like the sociology part of it and like why it happens and how people understand it as well.
Have you come across some ways that you think would be effective to stop that behavior online, to get people to no longer do that sort of thing?
Well, that's a really big question. I think part of it is that Facebook and Instagram and other social media companies don't have the tools to stop it yet, or they haven't tried to find these structures to prevent cyberstalking. But I think it's also like a much bigger problem in the way that we treat women as a society, the ways that we socialize men to go after women, etc. Like the media portrayals of a lot of like romantic films, if you really look at them closely, they're just stalking films.
They are? Right. Is that,
So,
yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I think it's really difficult to, like you said, monitor who's following you. I know people say, well, just make your page private. But I had a friend the other day who got a friend request from himself. So people are making duplicate pages to try to have access to you. And it's nearly impossible to kind of make it so private that nobody knows what's going on.
What's the worst story that you've heard about social media?
Oh, boy. So I work with a lot of teenagers. And the worst story I heard, girls in love with boy, girl sends inappropriate picture to boy. When the relationship is great, they break up, he sends it to every single member of that student body. The whole school now has naked pictures of her, which led her to a suicide attempt, actually, and ended her up in the hospital because not only is that picture circulated, now she's going to school and everybody's continuing to taunt her. That picture will never, ever go away.
Wow, that's
14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
14 years
14.
old.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. What do you think it is?
That's the case with most of these like sexual nature crimes. The closer you are to them, the more likely that will happen. But at the same time, we take those less seriously. At least that's what my research shows. The closer the stalker is to the victim, the less seriously we take it, the less fearful we view it. But it's also the most dangerous type of harassment.
You mean in proximity?
Like if you were coworkers, if your ex-partner, those are the most common. A friend. So it's not just strangers on the internet, which I think we have this like idea that it's only happening from strangers just emerging out of these cyber bushes, but really it's your ex-boyfriend, a friend who became obsessed with you, these sorts of things. And I think even if you have like a professional page, a lot of like women, people of color, etc., they'll be more likely to be harassed even on like their professional Twitter, those sorts of things.
You know, there's so much going on there. I mean, in different sections of Facebook and that sort of thing. Tell me a story.
So I had, a couple years ago, there was something called a thought page. If you don't know what a thought is, it's a less than desirable person based on their sexual activity. Ooh, I said that was nice. So basically, they created this thought page, and they were putting names and phone numbers of young women on this page. And they were getting harassed. And basically, if you had any kind of sexual encounter with anyone in your school, you might end up on this list. And there were so many young females who ended up in the psychiatric unit because of this.
Really?
Absolutely.
How are you spelling it?
THOT.
Okay. Wow.
Giving personal information about them, pictures of them, sometimes videos. And it took for police to get involved for this to stop.
How big a problem is revenge porn?
It's a pretty substantial problem, and I think part of it is that people don't know about it, and then the police don't take it seriously. A lot of
The cops don't take it seriously?
No, a lot of cops don't even take stalking seriously.
Why?
I mean, I think part of it is like the pervasive use of the word stalking, like the way that I hear my peers say stalking, they mean like to look at someone's pictures online, while stalking means like a targeted like harassment, a series of harassments that won't stop. So I think, yeah, part of it is the language and the way that we don't think about how upsetting and harmful and damaging it is, as she knows.
And we live in an age where stuff doesn't go away. Yeah. Like, I feel lucky. I came up in a time before all of this stuff. You can Google pictures right now of people from years ago.
And we don't see it as the real world, which I think is a problem. We view it as this like separate space from the real world. And so people just think they can do whatever they want on there. And then after it happens, people don't take it as seriously. They like, I've heard, oh, just turn off your computer. You're being stalked. Just log offline. But it's really not that simple. You can't just turn off your computer.
What do you have to do?
We got to change the legislation. We got to help people understand the pervasive problems and like the actual damaging psychological impacts of it, I think.
And on a personal level, what do you have to do?
Personal level, I would say be careful, but it really is difficult these days. I know a lot of schools are taking it more serious now, and our people are getting charges for sharing these pictures. It's actually now considered sharing child porn. So now there are legal consequences to it. And I think, like you said, that's going to be the way it has to go because it's so easy to press send on anything.
All in all, social media is a good thing?
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah. It's like anything else. Too much is too much, and moderation is the way to go.
Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In just a moment, we'll be back with some final thoughts. Social media is clearly here to stay, and it's become a major part of our lives, with people spending more and more of their time on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and countless other sites and apps. That can be a good thing as we're all staying connected. But what about the negative, and how do you prevent it? How do you know if what we're seeing is real and steeped in facts and not some content simply posted to manipulate you or your thinking? Who would be best to decide what's out of bounds or hate speech or bullying? You know, there's a thin line between bullying and criticism, and who decides when it's crossed? In making the platform safe, are we really talking about censoring thoughts that are different from our own? And if you do that, does it take away from hearing both sides of the issues? And there's the question of how big some of the companies are, and would government be overstepping if they reversed the mergers that saw Facebook acquire Instagram and WhatsApp and began to break up companies? Would there then be competition? There's lots to think about. Thanks for joining our discussion. I'm Mike Gilliam. We'll see you next time on Let It Rip.